Hello everybody, this is Jacob Vile 2, my second channel. So today's topic of discussion is not the best for me, but I'm also going to be giving some feedback on it because I get a lot of questions on this, not on YouTube as well as in Facebook and Instagram. A lot of people message me. Instagram and Facebook, Jacob Vile, feel free to contact me, add me, follow me, whatever y'all want. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So this topic today is focusing on amp hours and what type of AGM batteries, as well as wattage, size of batteries, etc. when it comes to AGM replacement battery setups. So my particular system, if you haven't already known, I have a single 12 in my Explorer. So I have a high output alternator, so a 350 amp alternator, and I currently have an XS Group 65 up front. So when it comes to AGM and replacing batteries, you want to make sure you have the same type of battery cells linked throughout. Of course, it's not the only option. You guys can comment and give constructive criticism on that for people that are learning as well, saying, hey, this is what I did. I run lithium with AGM, no issues, etc. So I've seen a lot of people suggest that. Anyway, my system by no means is the best or cleanest. It works for me. It's definitely rigged up in some areas, but the concept is what matters. So don't worry about the looks. So going into wattage power rating versus AGM battery capacity choice of selection you need to make consideration on. What do I mean by that is if your battery is rated at 100 amp hours, I normally go by 80 to 120% range of efficiency on your battery. So for every 1,000 watts, 800 to 1,000 watts should be an 80 to 120 amp hour battery. So realistically, every 10 amp hour AGM battery needs to be 100 watts realistically. So my battery here is 86 amp hours, so I'm just going to multiply that by a 10, instantly just add a 0, so I can get 860 watts out of this battery here. That's just a simple math that I do. So with a amp, I have a 350 amp alt. I assume that my alternator charge supply is also going to support that. So I'm going to go ahead and let's just round that up to 900. So 900 watts plus 350 times 10, so 3,500 watts. So I'm right at 3,500 plus 90, so I'm at 4,400 watts. Right now I'm at 4,400 watts. And the way I figured that out is what size alternator I have, but I also got to consider efficiency in that. So with the vehicle running, if this is my only alternator, then I also need to know, hey, if I'm running my lights, running my AC, running my stereo, everything drawing, go ahead and take 80% of that. So let's just say a 300 amp alternator instead. It's a 350, but 50 amps of that's going to go to my vehicle. So let's just say 3,000 watts worth of alternator, and then I have 900 watts, so 3,900 watts so far. Okay, so now I'm going to go to my second battery in the back. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong on this when it comes to how you calculate this, but this is what I've always gone with. Once again, not the prettiest. I have a single 12 build back here. Watch my other videos if you haven't seen them. I have a XS Power Group 75 back here. It's rated at, I have it covered up, but it's rated at 100, let's just say right at 180 amp hour battery. So that's another 1,800 watts. So I have 3,900 watts plus 1,800 watts. So 3,900, so we're just going to say round it up to 4K watts. So 4,000 watts plus 1,800 watts, that's 5,800 watts. So I'm just going to round it down just to be efficient. So I can support around a 5,500 watt system right now with my alternator charging at 2K RPM with this battery and my front battery. So right around what I'm at. So I have a 6,000 watt amp. So this is rated at 6,000 watts clamp power at 1 ohm at 14.4 volts. So if I can keep my voltage up to that, which I can't with my battery bank, especially when I don't have enough alternator support. So what happens is if I was to have a second alternator to help support that battery reserve, I wouldn't have voltage issues like I do. A lot of people would suggest, Jacob, go into lithium. Why don't you get lithium batteries and all? I don't want to put any more money in this system than I have. And this video isn't for me. This video is for the guys that are learning. So what you want to do is go for 100 amp hours per 1,000 watts. So if you have a 2,000 watt amp, you need 200 amp hours of reserve, or consider in the alternator charge. So if your alternator is rated at 100 amp hours, let's just say you get 100 amps out of your alternator. Let's say it's 120 amp stock. So go ahead and do 20% of that. Let's just say 100 amps are going to the system, so that's 1,000 watts. So if you're a 2,000 watt amp, then you're going to need 100 amp hours worth of AGM. That's the way I do with it. Just literally multiply and add a 0. So times 10. Add a 0 to your number roughly for your amp hours rated of your AGM battery. And that's how I pretty much calculated what I needed out of my system. I went with the biggest AGM I could get in the back, just one, And then I went with the biggest size AGM under my hood, and that was enough to support a 5,000 watt system for me. I'm not going to have the best voltage. I'll probably drop into the mid 12s whenever it's an idle, when my alternator's not revving. But if I'm revving my alternator and my alternator's bringing good supply on a high output alternator, I can keep mid 13s, no issues, as long as I'm not clipping and it's clean signal. So nothing wrong with that. It could always be better. You can also ramp up and get into more in the high 14, 15 volt range with alternators too. But I hope I answered some questions with that. If y'all have questions, comment and ask, as well as guys that know what you're talking about, know what you think of, and know experience on this, comment, because I don't know the best on this. I just literally went by that simple rule of thumb. Every 100 amp hour of AGM is 1,000 watts. So easy math. Add a 0 to your amp hour, and then that's your 1,000. That's your wattage rating. This battery actually says it's rated. It has a power rating on it. No, it doesn't. Some of them do. Some have a rating 1,000 watts, or it'll tell you how many watts rated at. But this one doesn't. This one just has max amps, CA at 32 Fahrenheit. Whatever the reserve charge, or however, I don't even know. See, I don't know much about batteries, but this is a video I needed to make because some people have asked me questions on this. So simple to end this in summary before I end. Make sure you have a battery. If you're looking at upgrading your batteries and not know what to decide on, go ahead and look at how much your wattage RMS rating of your amp is, and go ahead and multiply or divide that by 10, so that way you can drop it down. So if you have 2,000 watt amp, you're going to need 200 amp hours of battery reserve. And then of course you can account some of that for the alternator, like I mentioned. That's the way I did it. It's probably wrong, but it's worked for me in my past systems for the past 6 years, no issues. So always can be better. You can always add more voltage supply, battery reserve support to your system. That's always going to be the case. You can always put more battery than needed. But of course there's going to be a part and situation where you decide, do I need an alternator first, or do I need a battery first? I always recommend battery reserve first, because your alternator is going to, of course your alternator needs to be upgraded too, but you're going to spend, an average person that isn't going to have more than a 2,000 to 3,000 watt system isn't going to really need a high output alternator with a daily driver system with only a couple thousand watts, as long as they have a good battery bank reserve. The alternator is going to struggle, but you're going to need more battery reserve first before you can actually have alternator. Because you're not going to want to have a stock battery or a single battery up front and no battery in the back with a high output alternator. 300 amp alternator with just 40 amp hour to 60 amp hour battery reserve in the under the hood isn't going to cut it. You're going to want to have that battery reserve to help support it. Alternator is only going to support so much. And I feel like the batteries outweigh the alternators. But it depends on how big you're going. Big guys that are big into audio, back when I had around 20,000 watts clamped, I literally had more around the 700-800 amp hours of battery plus 2 alternators, and then of course I had lithium before that, which is another whole topic I'm not going to get into. That's all I got. Jacob Vial out. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time.